Hello and welcome to the Heat Check Podcast, Miami Herald's Miami Heat Podcast. I'm David Wilson, and I'm joined, as always, on the other line from the desert. It's Anthony Chang. What's going on, Anthony?
I need water. It's dry out here.
Yeah, just drinking your canned water as I do the intro. Anthony's out in Phoenix, obviously, for Heat Suns on Friday, trying to wrap up a winning West Coast trip for the Heat.
Yeah.
Some pretty good stuff out there so far. We'll obviously get into that. And starting with what they did last night, we're recording this on Thursday evening after Anthony traveled today from LA to Phoenix after a very impressive Heat win, I thought, on Wednesday night. Missing Jimmy Butler, of course, missing a handful of rotation guys. Flirted with a second half blown lead, right? I think the Lakers got it to maybe 3, I think, in the fourth quarter before Duncan Robinson briefly turned into Stephen Curry, and the Heat pulled away. So they go 2-2 on the trip so far, a chance to make it a winning West Coast trip on Friday night. I guess just first of all, any big takeaways from the first 4 of this West Coast trip, and specifically that win on Wednesday, which is the signature win, I think, of this trip so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the depth, which we already knew, just continues to shine. I mean, they've had a handful of guys out, pretty much half the rotation out for most of the trip, and other guys have stepped up, whether it's Kevin Love playing a bigger role, or Nikola Jovic against the Lakers, or even Jamal Cain against Golden State played well. It's just different guys on different nights stepping up. So the depth has really stood out, and also, just like it's what Erik Spoelstra talks about, of just like finding ways to win. Like that Lakers win wasn't pretty. It was one of the uglier games this season, I think, through the first 3 quarters.
Yeah.
The Lakers had 20 turnovers, and they were shooting 3 of 23 on threes, and the Heat were only ahead by 5 points.
Mm-hmm.
Like, entering that fourth quarter, I was like, okay, they're going to lose this game. Like, LeBron and Anthony Davis are going to take over, and it's over. Like, they should be up by way more. But then the Heat finally got hot and won that game. So just think it's the depth and just kind of the trademark of all Heat, Erik Spoelstra teams, of just like finding a way. Like, until you get healthy, just like finding different ways to win. And yeah, you might not be building continuity, you might not be building like a singular identity, but whatever is needed on a given night, like they find a way most nights to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the fourth quarter in particular of that game on Wednesday was like a Heat propaganda film, essentially, right? No Jimmy. Bam was out there, but it's not like even like he was kind of like whatever last night. It wasn't like a 5 of 14 from the field for him. He was not driving the offense there in the fourth quarter. And it turned into Duncan Robinson, like running the offense through him as like a ball handler, and Jaime Jaquez having the stones to go at least once right at LeBron. Hit a big 3 in the corner too. So I mean, they won without their best player, with their second best player kind of being pedestrian. And, the Lakers were missing a couple of guys, but LeBron and Anthony Davis were still out there on the other end, and did not faze Miami at all.
Yeah, they outscored the Lakers 64-12 on threes, which hasn't happened often.
Yeah.
For the Heat teams. They don't put up a high volume of threes, even though they make them at a good rate. But the Lakers just they don't make threes. Like, they're not a good 3-point shooting team. So the Heat zone, and they've really relied heavily on zone these last 2 games, which the zone was a big story last year. This year, not so much. They've kind of gone away from it a little bit. But with so many of the top perimeter defenders out, they really turned to zone. It didn't work against the Clippers because they have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. But it worked against the Lakers because, again, they went 4 of 30 from 3. And when a team shoots 4 of 30 from 3, they're oftentimes not winning the game. I think the Lakers last night became the first team this season to shoot under 15% from 3 while also committing 20 turnovers.
That's bad. You're not going to win games like that.
No. You give the Heat credit, obviously, for forcing some of those turnovers and making it tough on the Lakers and having a good plan to throw a zone at them. But also the Lakers just really played very bad.
Yeah, and they seem to be in a little bit of annual LeBron turmoil, right? It's going to happen at one point in every season where he's grumpy about the coach, but it happens. It happened his Miami seasons, right?
Yeah, every year.
It happens everywhere. So he maybe got him at a good time, but again, doing it without Jimmy, I thought, and on the West Coast, as we said, like I think a 2-3 trip is like, kind of the norm when you go out west, and the Heat locked up at least that and have obviously a real chance with what'll probably end up kind of being the signature, I guess, game of the trip, with the Suns playing better right now. And the Lakers, obviously the Lakers are always going to be the marquee draw, but they have not been playing as well lately. So it'll be interesting to see how they look on both sides. The Suns playing a good team, and obviously the Heat wrapping up a pretty grueling trip. I guess Jimmy won't be playing.
Jimmy's out.
So
Haywood's out again. So mine down at least 2 rotation guys. And then Caleb Martin is doubtful, so he probably won't play either.
Yeah.
So he might probably gonna be down 3 rotation.
Still gonna be shorthanded. Just skimming through the Heat box score from last night, one thing that stands out to me: not a single player had a negative plus minus, which I know plus and the Heat obviously pulled away in the fourth quarter, so that helps too. But that was a competitive game all the way, and everyone on the floor was like that. That's when you talk about that depth that they have. Jaime Hawk has plus 24.
It was really impressive. And how about the fact that all 8 guys that played in the 8-man rotation scored double-digit points?
Yeah, that was big too.
Like that.
Duncan Robinson, who kind of became the hero of the game, he was 0 for 9 or 1 for 9 from the field before the fourth quarter?
I think he had 2 points in the first 3 quarters, or 0 of 6 on threes, and then he was 3 of 6 on threes in the fourth quarter, scores 11 points.
And contested threes and hit a crazy scoop shot over Anthony Davis. Like I said, Heat propaganda film, I thought, on Wednesday night.
It was fitting they were wearing their Heat culture jerseys.
I know. I was watching my brother, who's, obviously it's like post-holidays, so my brother was still in town, and we were like it's one thing when you wear those at home, you got the court and all that, but to wear that on the road, it's kind of goofy, but it's, like I said, that's the vibe they're trying to give off, and I thought they lived up to that reputation. Hard to argue with it when you win a game like that, I guess.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I have to check this, but I saw on Twitter that they're 6-2 in those jerseys. So I think when it first came out, everyone was like, "Oh my God, like it's gonna be so bad if they start losing in them, and especially with the court." But, they're backing it up. They're 6-2 in those jerseys, so it's working out.
They'll be wearing that for the entire postseason.
Maybe that continues.
Okay. As we mentioned, Heat's still pretty dinged up right now. Sounds like 3 guys will be out on Friday night, just as they were on Wednesday. We saw some of what the Heat has done so well, I think, on Wednesday, with just everyone chipping in, as you mentioned, all 8 guys from the 8-man rotation scoring in double figures. This has obviously been a recurring topic for us throughout the year, because the Heat have still, whatever the stat is that you keep saying, it hasn't changed in a week, of how little the kind of the main 3 guys have played together. You see it out on a West Coast trip where guys are out and could very easily a couple games get away from you, and all of a sudden you're just trying to, I don't know, steal a win somewhere to not have an empty trip. They could come out of this with a better record than they went in. At the very least, they'll have gone pretty close to 500 on the trip. I don't know. What do you make of? You mentioned the depth being so impressive as one of the big takeaways from the early part of this trip. Is it surprising? Is it reached a point where it doesn't surprise you at all that the Heat are able to kind of tread water in the way that they are right now? Because they've been doing it basically for 2 months.
2 decades.
Yeah. I mean, this year, 2 months. They didn't do it so well for a lot of last year.
Last year was a struggle.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. I think, and I know the players have to do it, and you have to have the depth to get it, to do something like this. But I really do think it starts with the coach. I think Erik Spoelstra really sets a good tone, even though we might not necessarily believe it when he says we don't have enough. He really is adamant. I made the mistake of asking him after the Clippers game about missing Jimmy Butler against the Clippers switching defense, and Erik Spoelstra said, I don't care about that. He just will not accept any excuse. His quote after that game also was, "We'll do whatever we have to do. Everybody is ready. Nobody cares if we have guys out, and we're not making any excuses for it." And then he's talked about, like I said, this kind of it's important for teams to figure out how to win regardless of who's available, who's not. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's a skill that's important in the playoffs. And I thought it was really interesting. Not that it's right or wrong, but I thought it was really interesting, like the contrast in in like the way coaches handle situations like that. Because after that Lakers game, after the Lakers lost, Darvin Ham was, as you would imagine, kind of grilled by the Los Angeles media, and he basically, I think his quote was, let me get it here. His quote was, "When you're dealing with different guys being in and out of the lineup that frequently, it's damn near impossible to find a rhythm. That's just being real." Which, I mean,
It's true.
it's true. And then I guess someone asked him kind of about, well, they had Jimmy out too. They're missing their best player, and he said, well, I think the multiple rotation players are more impactful. If you lose one of your big dogs, you're going to figure out how to try and manage without them. Which again, I don't know if that's true, but okay. But what he didn't mention was that he were also missing two other rotation guys, and Hayward Highsmith and Caleb Martin. And for most of the trip, they were missing even Josh Richardson as well, along with those three guys. So I think that approach that Erik Spoelstra uses, while sometimes people might laugh at it or say, "Okay, come on, Spo, you're fielding three two-way guys and a rookie who barely plays, and two of your top four players are out. I mean, you don't have enough." That attitude, I think it really works, and it's proven. Maybe last year it didn't work as well, but over the last few years, like when this team is shorthanded, they always find a way either to make it close, be competitive, come away with wins when you don't think they're gonna win. And this year that's really been tested because 19 starting lineups, which we talked about, fourth most missed games in the NBA, behind only three really bad teams: Memphis, the Hornets, I think Portland. That's kind of been the story of the season. Like they've been able to survive that so far, to be, what are they now, 20-14 and fourth in the East. Like that is, that's not where they want to be, fourth in the East, but that's impressive considering everything they faced through the first 2+ months of the season.
Yeah, I'll say watching that game last night, it was not like, kind of, it didn't even occur to me that the Lakers were like shorthanded. Like when LeBron and Anthony Davis are out there, I mean, the Heat would kill to have, like, again, I don't know what the stat is right now, but how few games the Heat's big three have played together.
8 games out of 34.
Yeah.
And they finished six of them because two of them, like, a guy left early.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's the Heat's depth, the way they build their roster and develop players and scout players. Like, they're always just going to have, as long as they do it this well as they've done it now for a decade, basically the entire post-LeBron era, and even the LeBron era, where they did a good job finding, going back to Norris Cole, right? Like they've done it for a decade plus. Spo is in a good spot where he has advantages a lot of other coaches don't because of how good the organization is at cultivating depth. But yeah, I mean, it's in some ways it's like old school where there's no. It's funny to say there's no PR spin when we just like talked about how like funny the Heat culture jerseys are, but there is no like, Darvin Ham is on the hot seat all of a sudden. Like he's trying to
justify
make his case for why Spo never does that, and he has the ability to do that, one, because he's really accomplished, and two, just because like the organizational stability, right? Like year one of the LeBron era, Spo was on the hot seat, or people thought Spo was on the hot seat, and he never was, based on maybe some of its revisionist history or whatever, but based on everything we know, he was never on the hot seat for a second, even when he was not an accomplished coach yet. So part of it is what he does so well, and I mean, so much of it is just about the organization is so much better run than pretty much every other organization in the NBA. I mean, every team has drama at some point. Like, and the Heat, the closest thing they had was when Jimmy Butler and Spo got into a fight on the bench 2 years ago. Like, can you remember another in the post LeBron era, like another on-court drama? I mean, there's like the Bosch stuff, right?
Yeah.
And like Dion Waiters, right? But
I was gonna say we don't have to get into this now, but in the Udonis Haslam podcast, a new one with Mike Miller, they had Bam Adebayo on last week. And they were talking about a story of James Johnson just beating up for 15 minutes a player who called him a name. So there's stuff behind the scenes, but yeah, to your point, like
It never
on the
gets out.
court,
It never
it never
there's
gets
never a
out. It's
Woj
never
story where
no.
it's like discontent within the Heat.
Right. Yeah.
And the fact that they run a tight enough ship that of James Johnson beating up at whoever, I don't know if we're going to speculate, is a new revelation from a Udonis Haslam, Mike Miller podcast. Like, I don't know, 4 years after James Johnson left the team.
Yeah, they said there were towels. It was in the locker room. Apparently, there were towels flying everywhere, and everyone was just walking by. Like, what? I'm not getting in the middle of that. Like, that's gonna have to just be settled between them two. But yeah, we can talk about that at another date. But you should listen to that podcast, Dave.
I gotta check it out.
It was pretty entertaining. It was pretty entertaining. Another thing is, like, I think Spo deserves credit for, like, the zone, right? Like implementing stuff like that.
Yeah,
where
stuff like that.
It helps you get by on those nights. Like, without the zone against the Lakers, I don't think they win that game because Heat's offense until the fourth quarter was awful. Like, one of their worst offensive performances of the season until that fourth quarter. They're only up by 5 points with how poorly the Lakers are playing, entering that fourth quarter. If they don't have that zone, which really, like, forced the Lakers into a bunch of threes and forced some turnovers, like, I don't know if they win that game. And that's the same can be said about so many games with Heat are shorthanded. They use that zone and it works to slow offenses down and kind of muck up the game. So it's like different tools like that where
the way their offense can look different on a given night. It's like, there's always different wrinkles that they have that other teams don't.
Exactly. So, I mean, all of that to be said is, like, breaking news, Erik Spoelstra is a really good coach.
Yeah.
And he deserves a lot of credit, I think, along with the players. And yes, this team is deep. Like, they have a lot of depth. But he's done a really good job this year, again, of kind of navigating all the injury issues because it has been bad. And I would say it might be even worse than last season, which is crazy. But Tyler Hero misses 18 games. Jimmy's, like, in and out. Again, 19 different starting lineups already in the first 34 games. Like, it's just been really bad. And they've been able to kind of stay afloat.
Yeah. I mean, they continue to be, like, unique. And as you said, fourth place in the East, like, I think that's where you come into the season, probably about what we thought they would be, right? And they've done it. And we thought that's where they would be if they got, like, we know Jimmy's going to miss his games, right? We know you just have to factor in an injury here and there. They've been, as you mentioned, third most games missed, fourth most games missed.
Fourth most, yeah.
And to still be in that spot where we basically thought they would be at the start of the season, like it positions them very nicely to make a run in the second half. The East standings are kind of crazy bunched right now. So,
there's a little separation after the top three. Not saying that he can't catch up, but there is a little separation.
They're gonna have to fight off the Knicks and the Magic Pacers. And Pacers. I think, like, the top 8 is pretty clear. Like you said, the top 3 are kind of a cut ahead of most other teams, but then 4 through 8 are, like, all separated by, like, a game and a half, I think. So,
but if the Heat are semi-healthy, like, do you count
right? Like, they should pull away from
Philly, like, right? But I'm saying, even if, like, they're behind them, like, you can't ever count them out against even Boston, Milwaukee, and Philly. Even though those 3 teams look better, like, if the Heat are kind of healthy, like, you're going to
go into the playoffs and you're going to say they're not as good as those teams, but I'm still going to pick them.
Yeah, right. It's like the same thing every year. Like, they might not be as talented, but in a playoff series, again, I think health is number one. Like, they have to be healthy to get to that point, right? Where, you can do this in the regular season from game to game, but, obviously talent, most of the time talent wins out in the playoffs. You need your top talent to win a series like that. But for now, credit to them, credit to the players, credit to the coaching staff for finding a way.
Yeah. Still want to see them all play together. We just haven't gotten.
I mean, it would be nice. It would be nice, but this is better than them going, I guess, being, 10 and 15 and 19 or something like that.
Well, yeah,
right? Where
definitely,
which it could be based on their injury issues.
I mean, they're 6 games over 500 right now. I think we talked about last week. They weren't, like, never that many games over 500 last year.
Yeah. So, we'll see. I mean, obviously, a winning trip is what they want, but I think you and I entered this saying you go 2-3. Like, it's not great, but it's at least okay. Like, it's fine. It's manageable. And they already clinched at least a 2-3 trip, and that's with Jimmy missing 4 of the 5 games on the trip and Caleb Martin missing. I mean, yeah, 4 of the 5 games on the trip, and Caleb Martin missing all 5 games on the trip, and Haywood Highsmith missing 3 games on the trip, and Jay Rich missing 2 or 3 games. Like it's, 2. You don't want to lose against Phoenix, but if they do, 2 and 3, it could be a lot worse.
Yeah, and the schedule kind of softens up once they get home too, so you've got a nice chance to like maybe get a little healthy, stack up some more wins, maybe start building some separation in the East. And as we've said a lot, like these games early in the year where these guys all have to play, you need to get the guys together at some point because you need to, as we say a lot, like the regular season is for experimentation as much as anything. But they're getting a good chance to like Nikola Jovic. We didn't even talk about him.
Yeah.
Starting on Wednesday night, getting a win, 15-8. I know he didn't play much in that fourth quarter where the Heat kind of went on their run to pull away, but still like valuable minutes. And that's a guy who was spent the vast majority of this season in the G League. So, is Jovic going to be a factor come playoff time? Like probably not, but maybe. And those are the kinds of things you're getting to find out right now. And the fact that Heat are winning games even when they're doing stuff like that is that separates them again. Like I'm not saying it separates them in a way that they're just better than every other team, but the way that their strength is their ability to do this. That I really don't think a lot of other teams. I can't remember another team doing this over any sort of sustained period of time. I mean, every time a team has problems, like the problem is always like, oh well, Kyrie Irving is gone. Like, of course the Nets are a mess.
Yeah.
Or Bradley Beal has missed how many games, and the Suns were like, so many teams are thrown off by one injury. And the Heat, again, last year they didn't do this, but for the most part, they do this every year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and they know it. Like, I've had guys tell me that are on the team now that were on the team last, prior years. Like, we're not the most talented team. I mean, that's clear. We're not the most talented team, but we think between, with our coach, with the help of our coach, and the way they play together and their depth, that they can compete with any team in the NBA, and they've proven it. They're, as Kevin Love said a few nights ago, their strength is in their numbers.
Yeah.
And that's really the truth. So. # Heat culture.
All right, this is the Heat culture propaganda podcast to go with the film from last night. All right, Anthony, you got anything else before we wrap things up here?
That's all. Big Dolphin game this weekend.
Big Dolphin game. How you feel?
I mean, I'm a lifelong Dolphins fan. I've seen so many bad moments. I mean, how could I feel good? This does not go the Dolphins' way. We'll see.
The Bills are in one of the craziest situations I can remember, where if the Steelers and Jags both win,
which is likely, right?
And they probably win because the Steelers are playing the Ravens, who are going to rest everyone, and the Jags are playing the Titans, who they're favored against. Then the Bills, if they win, they get the 2 seed, and if they lose, they miss the playoffs entirely. It's hard to believe that that's possible, but it is.
It's hard to believe that after all this, the Bills are favored in this game.
I know.
Which is like, I get it because
they should be.
The Dolphins are so banged up, right? But it's just like, if you would have told me that 4 or 5 weeks ago, I would have been like, no, there's no way.
And I mean, it's also crazy because the Bills, I mean, they crushed the Dolphins, but that was like week 4
3,
or something.
Or week 4.
Yeah, it was so long ago.
Yeah.
Feels like most of these division games, the way they schedule them now, like so many teams, I feel like are playing the same division opponents like twice in 3 weeks.
It's like the Jets and the Dolphins, they played.
Yeah, they played twice in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I know the Eagles and the Giants are playing twice in 3 weeks now. So it's strange that they've gone so long. And both teams, I mean, obviously the Dolphins are insanely banged up now too, but the Bills, didn't Tre'Davious White get hurt in that game for Buffalo? And I think Matt Milano got hurt the next week. Like they're a totally different team than, I mean, they've gone through like 3 seasons.
All season. Yeah, they've dealt with injuries all season.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know if it's just me or not, but like I feel like there's more injuries this year in the NFL than like ever.
Yeah.
Like it just feels like
the quarterbacks definitely.
Yeah, it's every week. There's just I feel like every team.
I mean, it's also you're following the Dolphins, who do have a major injury.
That too.
And even when they're not major injuries, it's like Jalen Waddle misses at least a handful of plays in every game. Raheem Mostert comes out for a few plays in every game.
Tyreek Hill turned his ankle, misses a quarter. Yeah,
exactly. So, that's gonna be fun. I'm excited for that one. People are saying there are going to be a lot of Bills fans down here.
Read that. I read there might be more Bills fans than Dolphins fans, which would be
I
unfortunate.
don't know where that calculation
South Florida,
but
I think like secondary markets, but I don't know how accurate.
Yeah, I don't know how you calculate that. Anyway, do you watch the Pinstripe Bowl?
I kind of did, but not really. I was out, so I was like looking on my phone, watching
That's
it a few quarters here and there. But
yeah, I don't think
it seemed like it seemed like a pretty bad game.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Ja'Cory Brown.
I like Bulls.
Okay. Ja'Cory Brown looked
pretty good.
better than I thought.
I'm pretty in on Ja'Cory Brown. Not as like the guy to be the starting quarterback next year, but like as an interesting prospect.
Like a guy is like, why didn't you play? Like why didn't you use him?
Like was this any and like it was no worse than what Emory Williams did. Like no disrespect to Emory Williams.
Yeah. Not to get into the Hurricanes, but like even just like one package, like in the goal line. You've had goal line issues.
They did that last year. Like, they ran him on 4th and short a lot. He was like their guy, or 3rd and short.
You couldn't find one package for him to use him in those situations? But anyway, whatever.
All right. We're on a tangent. Thanks as always for listening. You can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony_Chang. You can follow me on Twitter at DBWilson2. We'll be back next week. I'm looking at the schedule now, trying to like plan in my mind when we're going to talk. You're going to be home, so it'll be easier to figure out. No like marquee game next week in the middle of the week for us to
well, we have upcoming, not that it means anything for the podcast, but the upcoming Sunday, the January 14th game against the Hornets.
Yeah.
Dwayne Wade Hall of Fame night. So maybe we can do some
true.
stuff next week.
Yeah, we should do something about that. Yeah, we'll strategize off air.
Yeah.
Thanks as always for listening. We'll talk to you guys next week.